Good evening, everyone. This is Live Before a Lock. He is Fast Eddie Fear. I'm Rinpak. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening, wherever you might be building lineups. Just to run a quick things off with you guys. So if you guys go to the Awesemo_com Twitter account, you'll see a giveaway where you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus if you guess the total combined points the Splash Brothers scored tonight. So go check that out. And go check out our all free NBA content that's been going out through the finals. You can find that on a thread in the Awesemo NBA handle. So, Eddie, we're coming off probably the most dramatic and entertaining finals game I can remember, leading up from the afternoon with Kevin Durant returning, him starting, taking the jump ball from the beginning. I was like, all right, he's ready to go. Maybe I was wrong. And then he looked absolutely lethal, was knocking down his catch-and-shoot jumpers, and then boom, he ruptures his Achilles tendon. Very, very sad to see that. He pretty much put his career on the line. A lot of finger pointing here and there about what happened, why he played, and if he let's say he doesn't get hurt, he looks like a hero, and like the Warriors did the right decision. It's so hard to pick and choose the blame game and whatnot. And there was also this big controversy of the Raptors fans cheering and like of him getting hurt, but like I said, maybe they were cheering because he got up. And so, but the Warriors went on to go and ignite that Raptors cheering and really kind of took off from the middle of when he got hurt early in the second quarter into pretty much the third. And it was like Boogie Cousins was carrying them. He looked engaged for the first time since game two. And then Kawhi happened in the fourth quarter. He had this 2-minute spurt to bring him back, take the lead. Everyone thought the Raptors were going to win. And then, bam, Klay, Steph, bang, 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 went splash, splash, splash. And we're back at it in Oracle, the last ever game at Oracle Arena. So I'm excited to see Game 6 happen. I want to hear your thoughts on what went down in Game 5 and what you expect different game scripts to be. What do you think Boogie Cousins will be like in Game 6? In a do-or-die situation again for the Warriors. And I'll let you handle the talking now.
Yeah. So, while people are filing into the room, let's, what struck me most about the whole Kevin Durant thing, both before that game and then after his injury, was the general absence of nuance that was applied by most, Twitter people. Not that I suppose I should be expecting sophisticated dialectic there, but there were just an incredible, number of moving pieces here. And a lot of people try to take a really, really complicated situation and simplify it to Durant bad, Durant good, Warriors bad, Warriors good. I mean, there are clearly a lot of different ways that things could have turned out other than the way that they unfortunately did. Um, I was interested by the minutes played, and I don't know if this, apportions any blame, if you're looking to blame towards Steve Kerr. Again, he says that they told him the injury could not get worse. That's not really how injuries work, and at the very least, any injury, increases the chance of additional injury. It's called, compensatory stress. It happens a lot. Not long after I tore the ACL in my right knee, I screwed up my left knee because just all of a sudden your weight, your muscles, your strength is all, incredibly imbalanced. So in this case, whatever damage was done, to his calf, and we can discuss that in a minute. I feel fairly likely had something, maybe not, maybe it ruptured the thing regardless. That's very possible, especially after a number of years, lots of minutes, lots of miles. This is, we saw it happen to Kobe. We saw it happen to DeMarcus Cousins. But for me, the minutes were really interesting. Again, I had significantly reduced my minutes projection from him. At the start of the day, absent additional knowledge, I had him at 31 minutes. I dropped that down to 28. He started the game, played the first 6 minutes and 10 seconds, sat for 2 minutes and 17 seconds, then came back for 5:47, and then got hurt. So he literally played 11 minutes and 57 seconds. So 12 minutes of the first 14 minutes and 11 seconds. So basically 12 of the first 14 minutes of the game. That is not, they said we don't want to put a burden on him. I obviously don't know how that would have gone. I'm pretty sure he would have gotten an additional rest pretty soon after the injury occurs, which is another reason it's tragic. Again, he played 6 minutes, came out, sat 2 minutes, went back in for 6 minutes. Pretty sure he was going to come out maybe even next dead ball. But he was on, course for, we'll assume he gets 3 6-minute shifts a half, and had a little more rest coming. Was going to play 36 something minutes, so do we apportion some blame there? Everyone's jumping all over the Warriors like they pushed him. Like, people wanted him to play game 4. He didn't. Klay, who was feeling good and lobbying very hard to play game 3, was shut down by the organization and coaching staff, who just said, no, you're gonna rest this one. So it's weird for me that people choose to, sort of ignore that and reduce it down to, he was forced to play, which just isn't how that works. There was the issue of exactly, how he used the ball, in that, he was attempting to maneuver and do all sorts of quick twitching movements and get around somebody when he got hurt. There's an argument that he should have played Dirk and just posted up and sat in corners, and that he never should have been bringing the ball up and that, doing that. There's a whole thing with the coaching staff where they're talking about the fact that specifically they didn't say the Warriors didn't say he has a calf muscle injury. They said he had a calf injury, which is a different thing. The Achilles tendon is part of the whole calf mechanism. Obviously, again, I'm no part of a doctor here, but when many people, including myself, said, it seems like he's reaching pretty low there, and you looked at it again, there was, holes of Bruder film, look where the ice pack is, that's maybe top of his Achilles, whatever, and they're lying about it. People turned around and went, well, we didn't say he had a calf muscle injury. We said he has a calf injury, and the Achilles is kind of part of the calf. It actually can...
They all connect, all the muscles connect.
I could get this wrong, but I think your Achilles tendon connects your calf muscle to your heel bone, I think.
Yeah, that's that whole muscle complex where they all connect together.
Right, it's part of the same complex. That is again, people don't know this. I have no legitimate medical scruples. You work in a related field, certainly. So I think your basis of anatomical knowledge. But yeah, complex is the right word. I heard it's part of the calf, complex. So, and that became the second game. Game 3 being the other one that ended up being pretty particularly random. Game 2 also, there's been a few pretty random games, but Durant getting hurt, affected the rest of the game entirely. And you and I, and we can use this segue in to talk about DeMarcus Cousins. I'm not sure he was going to play. He had not stepped on the court at the time that Durant got injured. They had started the Hamptons 5, which is bad news for him because it means Draymond is playing a butt ton of minutes at center. Not a butt ton necessarily, but enough minutes at center. And he wasn't the, second player into the game. Looney and Bogut came into the game before DeMarcus Cousins. He might not have played, and that makes this really interesting. He was the 4th center in that game for the Golden State Warriors. And it feels weird, but I still think I really like him. I certainly think he deserves GPP attention. Now, we can, and I'll hand it back to you in a second, we can go back to game 3, which is the game Klay was forced to rest, which was the game Cousins started, which was the game Looney was also out. And you and I think most people, I wouldn't say all people, were pretty excited for DeMarcus Cousins. He was cheap. There was no Klay, which opens up a significant role in the offense. There was no Looney, who had been playing, obviously, the most minutes at center and is arguably the best center on this team. And he went out there and was dreadful. He played, I think, 19 minutes and had 11 fantasy points or something, by far. His least impressive per minutes performance this game, but he's had a couple other, obviously, very good performances. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and we'll go back to this, but talking about Gasol and Cousins and Looney and Ibaka, really who's starting and who's coming off the bench actually plays a big role here, because Cousins starting feels good because you're opening up a real minutes upside. Again, if you look at the game where he was his best game of the series, where he had 55 fantasy points in game 2, I think. I don't want to get this wrong, but in the one game where he went out there and had a huge role.
Yeah, he had 35 fantasy points. He had 10 rebounds, 11 points, 6 assists.
Double. He had 6 dimes and ended up as the captain. Sorry, he was the best captain on DraftKings. There's been 5 best captains. Same person has not actually been the captain in the best possible lineup so far. You had a Boogie day, a Steph day, a Kawhi day,
and a Gasol day in the game.
Gasol day in game 1 was Pascal. So we've actually had 5 different perfect captains in 5 games thus far. And Boogie on that one day, a 55 was stuck in my day. I think that's what he had as a captain. You said 36. That sounds right. 36 would be 54. So I think he might have had 36 and a half and hedged 55 or whatever. But had that really good day in, 28 minutes. And again, so you want Boogie starting because it opens up. There's a greater chance of him getting really significant amounts of time. Coming off the bench, the matchup is a lot better. You want him to see more Serge Ibaka and less Marc Gasol. But Looney starting means that he gets more Ibaka off the bench, which is particular. I mean, there's just all sorts. So I'll hand it back. Talk about something. I rambled a bit there. Sorry.
No, that was good. I mean, to see how the second half rotation went, I'm
They
curious
started
to see.
Looney. I should point that out. Looney started the second half. Obviously, the Hamptons. Sorry, I didn't say that. Hamptons 5 started the game. Second
Mhm.
half, Kevon Looney started before leaving with injury.
And I think that's where we should be kind of looking at and kind of focusing on how that will kind of apply to this game. Obviously, no Kevin Durant in those minutes those like 12 minutes will get dispersed around, like diversified among different players and whatnot. But in the second half, I was very shocked to see no Alfonso McKinney, who had been playing his 10 minutes throughout every game here or there. And he only played 2 minutes in the first half. So I'm curious to see if he played those 2 minutes, I think, right as soon as Kevin Durant got hurt. I'm curious to see how many minutes he'll play. I'm assuming he'll play his 8-9 minutes again, but there's a downside there. But I'm obviously not interested in really playing him if I were in any lineups as of now. But I'm more or less interested to see how Klay Thompson's going to do. I've been on the Klay Thompson game 6. He's done it over and over again. He did it in 16 at Chesapeake. He did it in last year at in Oracle versus Houston, and then he did it earlier this year in the first half against Houston as well. I make this joke among my friends, and I've been saying it for a long time now. It's pretty public and trendy, but Klay Thompson's 2 favorite words are Game 6, backs against the wall, and he delivers. And he's the man. He out of all the Warriors players, he was the one who was verbally really animated and upset of how Toronto handles the whole Kevin Durant thing. He was visibly upset. He had this long Instagram post earlier today. He's doing it for K, and I'm pumped to play Klay Thompson. I'm all about the narrative today.
Would you be more or less pumped to know that on DraftKings he is currently listed as out?
Klay Thompson.
Yep.
I
have no secondary sources confirming that, but I'm.
Did they mistakenly put the wrong person with K out?
But there's no one. No, Durant is also out. I was thinking maybe it was a Kevon Looney error, but he's in, so he would be Q or unlabeled. So
unbelievable. I want to do a quick news search, but I don't think nowhere he's playing. Otherwise we would have heard this by now.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. I mean, he'd have to have tripped over something in the locker room. He warmed up and everything, so I don't.
Unless something happened on the way to the stadium, but no, he should play. That's even better for Klay Thompson. I don't know how much that depresses the ownership, but I think it'll depress some of it.
Oh, the ownership has been significant, and he's played well, and he is a little bit still too cheap. I think he's still 11.5 on FanDuel. That's too cheap relative to the other players. One thing we can look at is this. Most of the guys have performed about where I'll say we expected them to this series. Most guys are averaging numbers at the very most, maybe 10% off what we thought they would throw out here, which is, pretty gratifying. It's not the hardest thing in the world to predict. You look at rotations, find similar games, look at the guys' numbers, adjust them by an appropriate percentage. If you've done it for a few years, but guys are putting out about what they should. So at this point, we're on reacting to ownership, reacting to outside performances. Like, we're still talking about center, so I'll segue to Serge Ibaka. Got there again last game. Played less than 17 minutes. Was 50%, 55% owned on DraftKings and 40-something on FanDuel at a pretty ridiculous price. Is still not that cheap and just is not this good. Serge Ibaka is almost exactly, for his entire career, a fantasy point per minute player. Across several teams, various matchups, playing center, playing power forward. Now, this is, I would expect him to score more than that here because he's seeing a lot of DeMarcus Cousins. And if you go back and watch the tape, you can see times that his relatively quick lateral mobility, offensive rebounds, having Cousins out there against him is very nice. So if you're looking to play Ibaka, you do want to get Looney starting, which I do think is the most likely scenario. If you're looking to fade him, you'd like to get Cousins starting because, and again, just more importantly, I think it's safe to, because of the matchup and because of the fact he's playing fewer minutes, which, it generally does matter. Guys can play harder. You're going full speed the whole time, so you get to one extra rebound. Let's kick him over. This year was actually his most fantasy points per minute in his entire career. He got up to about 1.1. Let's kick him up to 1.25. Okay, which is probably higher than a gun to my head I would project him at, but being nuanced about it, let's bump him up to 1.25 fantasy points a minute. In the 5 games this series, he's played he's played between, I think, 16 and 22 was the high. He played 16 minutes and change in the last game. Let's be nice and bump that up to 20. I'd probably project him for about 18.5 because of those ranges. That would be sort of rounding everything up. I think you could expect 25 fantasy points about him. He has overperformed. Now, it is a really good spot, and if you disagree with anything I just said and think, no, I think he is good for 1.4 fantasy points per minute in this series, and I think he is, I think this is the new normal. These are not overperformances. This won't regress to the mean. This is the new mean. Okay, that's fine. He's looked very good, but to me, you stick a gun to my head and say project his line today, I would say something like 18.5 minutes and 21.5 fantasy points, and for a guy who's going to be 50% owned on DraftKings, and 40+% owned on FanDuel, where he's going to come in under those numbers half the time, trying to find an edge on a one-game slate, I would probably end up playing 0.
I completely agree with you.
Could that make you look, and again, I look around the internet and every other tout site talking head is like, oh, I'm going to stick with Ibaka, he's obviously doing great. I guess. I see, 17 minutes and 27 fantasy points, and I'm like, okay. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Can he get there? There's any number of ways he can get there. He can just do that again, in which case he's very possibly in the best lineup. Although it is worth pointing out that the value of a guy like Ibaka is relative to the value of the other mid-price to low plays in the field, and that gets left aside a lot. It's like Draymond. Draymond's been in the best possible lineup 2 or 3 times. But he hasn't been brilliant. His best game was the 48 points he put up in the game where Klay left for injury and Steph was dehydrated or whatever the hell. And between then has had, his game scores are 40, 41, 42, 44, 48. Something like that. Give or take a point on each of those. Which is about what you expect. I had him projected at, I think, 41, between 40.5 and 41 every game this series. I'd probably bump him a little higher because I think in this situation at home, there's a little more likelihood that he exceeds the minutes capacity even a little more. So he maybe plays 43 minutes. Not a great matchup for him, but engaged. And Sans Durant is more helpful than hurtful. So, I think he gets low to mid 40s, and we've seen that basically every game. I thought about 41 average. I think he's averaging about 42.5 a game or something. So that's pretty damn close. But what he does has less to do with what Draymond does than what everyone else does. When enough other guys shit the bed that 42, 44, 48 in theory ends up being the second highest score, well, then he sneaks in there. Not because he's amazing. That's not the world's best ratio, not the world's best point per dollar, but you're never picking guys in a vacuum. So when you go back to talking about Ibaka, one of the other reasons I'm not that excited about Serge Ibaka is I can get Andre Iguodala at similar to lower ownership for less money who has a slightly higher projection for me because his price came all the way back down on DK where he's 4,800 again. Again, he went 46, 56, 58. Then we had the whole Durant back thing. That made you a little bit suspicious. Maybe sheds a couple minutes here and there. So for all those reasons, and the price on FanDuel just not being appealing, like he's sneaking in there even with his over performances, I would have almost none. Could that absolutely kick you in the balls? Sure. Again, any number of ways he can get there. He can just overperform in his minutes again. Marc Gasol can get in some foul trouble. The Warriors can push super, super small and actually do something they've tried many times to do and failed to do in this series, which is abuse Marc Gasol in a pick and roll, get him out to the 3-point line, try to make some hay that way. He can turn an ankle. So again, a one-game series is never going to give you a very informed decision as to whether or not something was a good play or a bad play. DeMarcus Cousins probably was a bad play last game. I didn't mind him in tournaments. But Durant ended up getting hurt, and he ended up being pretty good and getting in there at his value price. That was still probably net a bad play. Having under the field's 30 whatever percent was probably better for you.
Definitely, especially when we got the news he wasn't starting, and all indications what Kerr was saying in the pregame talk with the media. That's when I was like, okay, I'm definitely hesitant, but and that's why I felt like it was the right move to pull all my cousin shares. But at the end, that's why we play this game, to make those type of decisions.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's the full talk through on Ibaka for me.
Yeah, and especially he's 10-5 on FanDuel. That is very, very expensive.
Isn't Marc Gasol still 10 flat?
Marc Gasol is still 10K. DeMarcus Cousins is 8K.
Yeah, I mean, how much better do you think Ibaka is than Marc Gasol if their ownership is even remotely similar? And it shouldn't be. But Marc Gasol has played, I think, 26 to 33 minutes per game in this series, and Serge Ibaka has played 17 to 22. And you have to spend up on Serge Ibaka. Look, I will give you the benefit of the doubt and call them roughly comparable players for fantasy purposes, and that's fine. I don't know how you take the guy who's projected by any reasonable system to play 10 minutes less, unless he's much, much lower owned. But he's been producing, so I just don't think that's the case. I do think Gasol will be higher owned on FanDuel than Ibaka. We can talk about it, but it's going to be 42 to 35 or something like that, where no way does the math work out to play Serge. So I'm setting myself up to take the big fall later, but it was like last game. I got lucky last game. I was like, yeah, I would have way under the field on Kevin Durant. Dude looked pretty good, and was playing more minutes than I expected. Maybe I misread the situation, but I explained why I came up with that. And then he got hurt, so all of a sudden I'm smart again, as opposed to literally I have days like that in my timeline, which are hilarious, where it's like, a tip. I went with very little Kevin Durant based on your advice. Here we go. 5 minutes later, he's going off. You dumb fuck. Pardon my language. 5 minutes later, he got hurt. You're a genius. And I'm just like, so it's there's a lot of skills in being good at DFS or talking about DFS, and one of them is not being too much of a slave to whether or not a guy happened to hurt himself. So
definitely. And while we're on Ibaka, he was on the floor during when the Raptors started rolling in the fourth quarter. He was on the floor with Norman Powell.
So was Norm Powell. Yeah, I was about to say, are we going to Norman Pascal?
Yeah. So I was going to Norman Powell. He is 6K and he's 1,800 on DK. Where he's priced at 6K, the other viable options are, I believe, Quinn Cook is also 6K, and who else is also 6K? I believe
those were the only two I had any real interest in.
Alfonso McKinney is 6K, but I'd rather play.
I mean, he has played every game in the series, which is nice. If you're building 150 lineups and you have two Alfonso McKinney, because Iguodala can again, it's now been a while since he was hurt, and we're getting 3 days off a game. So again, any player leaving a game due to injury is around a 2% chance. Iguodala, a couple of weeks ago would have been at 8, and then 6, and then 4, and he's pretty close to back to wherever the hell he would have started. But there's a way Alfonso McKinney can get there, so I would rather play Cook, and I would obviously rather play Powell. But
would you rather play Cook or Powell?
I would probably rather play Powell.
Mm-hmm.
I need the guy to get me, even at minimum price on FanDuel, probably. Not necessarily. Again, when you're dealing with a one-game sample size, there are times that you have 4 guys go off. So let's say you have a lineup that is, I'll do something that probably maths out about right in my head. In some order in the top 3 slots, Curry, Kawhi, I don't know, Klay and Cousins or something like that, or Marc Gasol and Cousins, and those are your guys, and you got 6K left. You may need those 4 guys, because those guys get 62, 62, 48 for Marc Gasol, and 44 for DeMarcus Cousins. So the best possible lineup has those 4 guys and Alfonso McKinney or Quinn Cook or Norman Powell getting 8. Like, that can happen if just whenever you have a one-game sample size, you can just have the interstitial spaces, the pacing of where guys, because on FanDuel it's got a lot to do with raw points. The raw points may just go A, B, C, D, E, and you need A, B, C, and D to build the best possible lineup, then it's whoever the hell fits in with the 6K left. So if that exists and leaves you 7,500 or 7,000 or 6,500 or 6,000, because those sort of end up being the same thing today. 7,500, I think you get Looney, I think is where he's in there. So 7,000 or less for that fourth spot, then sure, maybe the best possible lineup involves the best guy in that price range, who will end up being Alfonso McKinney, I don't know, 15% of the time. I would generally project him to be pretty well less than Cook or Powell. The reason I would probably play Powell is he's still viable in that structure we just talked about, and there is a real chance that he gets to play 20 minutes, which he did in game one of the series before randomly getting his butt set down for a lot more of game two. He was on the court. Now, he played, I want to say, 2.5 minutes in the first half, and I didn't expect him to see a lot of time in that game. Again, Fred VanVleet is the key reserve, had been starting the second halves, so on and so forth. Shadows Steph, that's obviously a guy they want to get out there, and then he's still competing with McCaw. But the whole reason that happened is, as I alluded to a minute ago, Pascal Siakam was sat down because he was not playing that well and missing open corner threes, and the defense hadn't been as good as possible, and they just decided to go a little more mobile, one more guy who can initiate the offense. There'd been some foul trouble, and so Norm played, I think, 9 minutes of the fourth quarter. And that combined with the fact that he played 21 minutes, I think it was, earlier in the series, one time before getting knocked down to single minutes repeatedly, I'd probably go with Norm Powell because I just think the odds of him getting 20 minutes and getting 20 fantasy points are still a little more likely than Quinn Cook. You can play Quinn Cook. I have him at 10 minutes right now. It's bounced around a little bit. I think he got... I'm trying to remember last game. Did he get 11?
He got 12 minutes, I believe.
12 minutes last game? So he
got 12 minutes, yeah.
We've seen that. We've seen other games where he's gotten 7, I believe, is the low for the series, but the way Steve Kerr runs his bench, it's pretty weird to get, outside of Sean Livingston, guy getting more than about 15 minutes off the bench. You get 4 or 7 minutes of Jordan Bell. You get 2 or 8 minutes of Andrew Bogut. We had the one game where Bogut got 22, but again, that's got to do with starting game injury replacement, and there was, again, no Looney that game, and Cousins was woefully ineffective. It's weird, sans injury, to get 20 minutes out of Quinn Cook. It's very unlikely to get it out of Norman Powell, but it's even more unlikely to get something like that out of Quinn Cook, because, again, Sean Livingston is more often the fill-in guy there. Although it's worth pointing out, again, a few games ago in Game 2, in the Clayless game, we talked about it, and I said I thought Cook would get the most minutes of him, and he did. Livingston got the start and got his 17 minutes, which is basically what he gets every game with this version of the Warriors with Durant out. If you look at games where Kevin Durant doesn't play, he plays 16 to 18 minutes almost every single time. Like, that's the load they're comfortable throwing on him. So a lot of that extra time did go to Quinn Cook. If you're building a lineup predicated on a lot of Raptors, I like him a little more for value because he tends to be on the court more when they're losing. When they're needing to instigate some offense, you get more of him and less of, say, Sean Livingston. But I think I would slightly more likely go with Norman Powell than Quinn Cook. They're both tolerable on either site at their prices. DK Powell's pretty significantly cheaper, I think, 1,800 versus 26. Trying to remember the Quinn
He is,
Cook
1,800, and Quinn Cook is 2,600.
Right. So there, if that $800 does something for you, certainly Powell. And even if it doesn't, leaving $800 on the table generally feels pretty good for me. So feel free to run Norm Powell in there.
Yeah. So I wanted to, someone we talked about pre-show is Andre Iguodala. He's priced really well on DraftKings. He's 10.5, I think, on FanDuel, so he's not priced as well as he is on DraftKings at 4,800. Yep. Yeah, and he's a potential captain spot that I've been looking at, and
fine with it. He's averaged 25 a game this series.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I had him literally projected for. I think 24.5, and he's somewhere in that range this series. Getting his 32 minutes is just objectively too cheap. He's going to be popular again when his price has gotten into the high fours. We've seen a couple games of series where he runs out there and he gets 55% owned. So for that reason, he's not a must-have for me. I think a lot of people, go there. I think he's points per dollar probably the best play on DraftKings. As far as points per dollar, he might be my highest points per dollar play. Going through everyone real quick, it's close with a couple other guys. But yeah, he's absolutely fine to have. He's absolutely fine to not have. Again, if he gets 19, which is not impossible whatsoever, it is not the best matchup whatsoever. But yeah, he's still priced very affordably. Danny Green is the other guy at 44 still. Um, I do think the minutes floor is very much there.
Yeah.
There's a chance you get a 21-minute game out of him, especially with the emergence of Powell as a relevant fourth quarter player. So you can see lineups where you have Kawhi at the 4 and they're running out, say, Green, Lowry, Powell at the top 3. So I have some concern with it, but it's $4,400. You certainly could see 30 minutes. I think right now I'm projected for 26. There's a floor and a ceiling above that. He's a very competent defender if they're winning, but no issue with him. But I'm more excited about Iguodala, who's averaging basically 30 or 25 a game, as opposed to Danny Green, who is averaging, again, what you and I project him for every day, which is about 19 or 20. He had the one exceptional game where he had 31, 33. And again, he's still going to get a lot of Steph guarding him on defense, so that's not necessarily the best match. Steph is not a terrible defender, but he's the closest thing you're going to get in this series.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still fine going there. But yeah, Iguodala, in cash would be a lock for me. I think I'm projecting him for 25 at 4,800. That's going to slide right in very nicely. Cash, I would start by going Captain Kawhi. Second would be Iguodala in a utility spot, and then try to figure out the other 4. I feel pretty safe in playing Kawhi. We should try to talk about each guy. So we got Kawhi left. We sort of got Gasol left. We got Lowry left. Kawhi has been the best possible captain once and in the best possible lineup the other 4 times. He has been extremely good. The first game was his worst game in the series. I think he had 43 on DK.
He had 43, correct, yeah.
That was largely because Pascal Siakam just went the hell off and then completely shat himself over the subsequent 4 games. Had a lot to do with that. But yeah, I think I had him projected. I've kicked him up a little bit. He's bounced between 50 and 51.5 for me most of the series. I think I have him up to 53 for today. I just think the extra minutes are a little bit more likely. It's really interesting when talking about captaincy or MVP candidacy for Steph and Kawhi. Kawhi has been a little bit better, and I think a really important part of your consideration here. Well, first of all, you have to consider who else is in your lineup. You want to build a narrative that makes sense. You will have days where the narrative doesn't make sense. Like, for example, in the optimal lineups on one, if not both sites last time, you had both Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol.
Yeah.
That generally is not a build you should be excited about. But again, one of the nice things about drafting and working with ownership is the fact that it's this weird self-regulating mechanism where this isn't a good idea, so it's less owned, which makes it a good idea. Not a lot of people are going to build Gasol and Ibaka, meaning that if you build Gasol and Ibaka, inherently the ownership of that lineup ends up being lower than a similar lineup because of the fact that many people, not most people probably, but many people go, 2 centers on the same team. That could work out badly a number of ways, but 1 game sample, they're both not terribly expensive. Everybody got home. I don't remember what my overall point was. My new chair is too comfortable. I just get in there and I'm like, oh, lumbar support and neck support. You go ahead and talk for a while. I'm just going to zen a little bit.
So, we covered Norman Powell. I was talking
about Kawhi. Wait, I'm finishing my point. I'm back to it. So I was talking about Kawhi versus Steph.
Mm-hmm.
So Kawhi will be more popular still. I feel safe in saying. The question as to what level Steph's ownership rebounds is the really relevant one. I will throw out a guess right now that on FanDuel, where this question is a little bit more interesting because you're just dealing with raw points. DK, the salary varies a little bit, and there's a couple other factors there. The last time we had on FanDuel, Kawhi at 75% and Steph at 40%. Now, Kawhi has been better and has scored more and averaged, by the way, you and I have, again, in fairness, because I'm talking about all the guys I had right on, I've had Kawhi at 50 to 52, and I think he's averaged closer to 56 or something like that. He's been extremely good. The minutes are obviously incredibly solid. So the question is, where do we think the ownership goes this time? How much of that ownership was Kevin Durant is in, Steph's upside is limited, which is a very intelligent thing to do. I would have still probably preferred Steph at half the ownership to Kawhi, but that's about right. Now Kevin Durant is back out again. Kawhi's ownership will rebound. I'll throw out early guesses that you get Kawhi 76 and Steph 61. Throw some numbers out there. That makes it pretty interesting for me. But one of the reasons I'm still slightly more inclined towards Kawhi, and certainly in cash, is that you get a real chance of Kawhi ISO dominance down the stretch that you don't really get out of Steph. It's there. You have a chance. Obviously, someone could get injured, or he could just get the hell going, or someone on the Raptors could get injured, opening up the specific defensive assignment for him, or Klay, or Draymond could get going. There's ways it can happen. But the likelihood of just, hey, Kawhi Leonard took 9 of the last 10 Raptors shots versus Steph or Klay took 9 of the last 10 shots is really, really significant. And especially in an elimination game with all that going on, I'm a little more inclined to play Kawhi there. But he will be higher owned than Steph. And Durant is gone again. So there is, to me, a conversation there. Now I'll throw it back.
Yeah, and especially Steph is $500 cheaper than Kawhi on FanDuel. And while he's $200 more expensive on DK,
Yep.
And having obviously they're very looking back at my projections, they're like projected very close for me in this game, and those actually that difference is making a kind of an interesting captain build. I don't like the captain builds with Curry. We also got starting lineup news. Kevon Looney will start for the Warriors. So the Warriors will start Curry, Thompson, Iguodala, Green, and Looney.
That's what I expected. So, minor cookie down for Marcus All versus if DeMarcus Cousins had started. Minor cookie up for it is weird because there's a lot of factors in play here. Like, it is a cookie up for Serge Ibaka in that he will now see a lot of DeMarcus Cousins, which is better for his matchup and his ability to produce. It is a cookie down for him as a captain for me, for example, because I want him to go the hell off and play a pile of minutes, and that is more likely if, say, Cousins is going off or some weird lineup starts, or they had started Sean Livingston and went super small again, which increases the likelihood that Marc Gasol gets run off the court, which is some sort of possibility. So it's kind of weird in that generally this is what I would want more. I think it raises the projection for Serge Ibaka in general, but it sort of reduces the supernumerary ceiling you're looking to get out of Serge Ibaka if you're running him out there as your pro or something like that. So it's there's a lot of changes there, but again, it'll largely not affect the numbers I've been talking about. It's about what I expected. It makes Bogut a little more playable. I do not think it is likely you get another 22-minute Bogut game. I think it's more likely I'd put him at like 8, but I think he does play now. And it's a one-game slate, so you got to occasionally take some shots, and there's some chance he gets extensive time. And it's I guess we should talk about Looney directly. He did not look good in the last game, and
he looked like he was in a lot of pain. And
he's clearly labored by the injury. There's a greater chance of him coming out of the game, which again is one of the many cookies they can give to Bogut or Cousins for that reason. But he is, a bit of a long shot GPP play, but he's going to be 8-9% owned, and would not be that bizarre for me to see him play 24 minutes and get 28 fantasy points, and that could sneak in there. I would not have a lot, but I would have some. I can see it happening.
I think I like him better on FanDuel, maybe at 7.5. It's like the value on FanDuel is so like it's not present.
Well, if you look on DK at his price, you are very close to Iguodala, Green, and other guys who project nicely on FanDuel. All those guys are more expensive than him. So yes, I think by extension, due to his price point, he's a little more exciting on FanDuel. Yeah,
I agree. In terms of the raw point standpoint, would you project Klay or Lowry for more?
Yeah, that's interesting and a good segue. Talking about Lowry, he is underperformed relative to what I projected. I think you can attribute that almost entirely to the significant foul trouble in the minutes that has cost him. I think he's averaging 32 a game in this series, where I had him closer to about 36. I still think that's about the right number. He's still priced extremely well. I like Lowry a lot. In one tournament lineup, I'm probably if I'm playing Steph, I'm going to play Steph and Lowry. That doesn't mean that Steph and Curry can't get there, but I do expect Lowry to be pretty significantly less owned than Klay. Klay Game 6 is a thing I've heard referred to 12 times today, even before you said it 5 times. I think you said it once. I don't know why I said that, but we talked about it before the show as well. I like Klay a lot. Raw points, I would have Klay by a point or two. Um, he's been very good. His injury shortened game, he had 42. I think in his 4 games this series, he's got 30, 35, 38, 43 or something like that. There is still a very real ceiling there. But the ownership in one lineup, I'm probably a little more excited to play Lowry. His ownership has come down a little bit. I talked about him. I liked him, I think, as one of the 3 captains last time when I talked about the 3 captains I would play in 3 tournament lineups. He was one of them, and he didn't disappoint. I'd be a little more excited to play. His ownership will come back up, but in the main tournament last time on DK, I think he was literally half what Klay was owned. So the one DK lineup I've been tinkering with today in tournaments does have Steph Curry as a captain and does have Lowry in it as a utility spot. It's sort of based on that distribution. If you have Kawhi as your captain, I'm probably a little more excited playing Klay because there's just some obvious leverage there. But again, I think in the last tournaments, I don't know if you have it up, but I think Klay was 50% owned and Lowry was 25 on the nose. So for that reason, I expect the Klay's number to actually increase even a little bit. I think Klay gets up to 53, 54%. I think Lowry picks up to 30 or 32, something like that. But I'd probably be a little more excited to play Lowry. But if your question was raw points, I will take Klay by a very little bit.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Being the 6th game of this series, it's been just a bouncing back and forth, especially with the lineup changes, with Kevin Durant coming in and whatnot. But Toronto's been pretty steady with everything. It's been Golden State that's been a kind of hard to just really predict and lay out and make it neat for us. But who have we not talked about?
I guess Marc Gasol specifically.
Yeah.
Take 30 seconds on. I'm just fine with him. There is a very real ceiling there. I think his best game this series was 37 unboosted. I think the price has come back from, I think last game he was 6K. Now he's up to 7K. He is a better guy for that reason on FanDuel, though I expect him to be pretty significantly owned. I'm pretty ambivalent. It's just fine. The absence of Durant and the absence of Hampton 5 certainly makes him much safer. He'd almost certainly be in my FanDuel cash lineup. That's my Marc Gasol bet. I mean, we've talked about Lowry. I guess we didn't specifically really talk about Siakam, except alluding to him during our conversation on Powell. Again, he was an absolute monster game 1. I don't particularly like him today from any raw point sensibility. He's still more expensive than Lowry on both sides. He's $800 more on DK. He's $1,000 or $1,500 more on FanDuel, I think. But ownership's going to be low. He's going to be, especially after getting yanked for parts of the fourth quarter, 18%, give or take. That's, okay. I'm fine with some exposure. I imagine I would come in marginally above that. It's obviously risky as hell. Now the minutes are threatened, whereas we've been seeing him play poorly, but play 40 damn minutes again. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think with that being said, I think it's a good time to pivot to some questions.
Do it.
All right. Let me just get the Slack up. Any other final thoughts or anything that you feel like you missed or anything that you want to cover?
Steph, Klay, Iguodala, and Draymond, the centers. I didn't do a specific talk on Draymond today, but again, he's basically the same guy. He's I think I have him again for 42.5 fantasy points or something like that, which is a cookie higher with Durant back out again, and I think the minutes could increase a little bit. He's just fine. He makes more sense as like your second guy in a more balanced lineup because, let me make sure this makes sense. Pretty sure this makes sense. You kind of need him to be the second highest scorer. It can work other ways, but if you get more stars and Scrubsy and you're playing, say, Steph and Kawhi to start as your top 2 spots, trying to go super value and put in Draymond ends up being a little bit worse than balancing out those last couple spots and having 1 value and 2 or 3 mid-price guys, because you need a really less likely distribution of points in production for him to somehow come in as worth his price relative to those other builds, but not outscoring Kawhi or Steph and Klay, et cetera, et cetera. So more often than not, he sort of makes sense in the lineup fading either Kawhi or Steph than the lineup that contains both of them.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that mathed out correctly and was very poorly explained. I tried.
It did math out correctly. So
Okay.
let's go to all right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right off the bat, Danny Green captain. I would try to say that's kind of too cute. It's like, yes, he has that upside. He showed that in game 3 where he hit, I think, 6 3-pointers and was phenomenal. But that's just been one game. He really hasn't done much. And there's obviously it's a huge risk and obviously a huge reward there, but I'm inclined against it. How about you?
I would be many lineups in until I got there. Like, I don't think it's unviable. I mean, he had his best game in the series was, I believe, 32 fantasy points. So him at 32 fantasy points, which obviously he can do. We saw it. Now, again, that was the game Klay was absent, which is really relevant for the backcourt defense we're talking about here. But still not impossible for him to get there, seeing a lot of Steph, etc. So him getting 32, which is your captaincy, makes him 48. Obviously, there's ways that can work out and be good enough, and obviously that can happen. I would have, I'd be a little more inclined towards Iguodala. Just projects a little better for me, points per dollar. There'd be other guys I'd go to. So, I expect my exposure to Danny Green would be in the 35% range with captaincy somewhere closer to 5%. So, 20 lineups in, I think I might give that a shot. But a couple of the questions were written as, is this viable? Yes, I think it's viable. I would not look at that lineup and go, oh, there's no way that's ever going to work. Again, one game slate, just weird shit is going to happen. You get Gasol and Ibaka. And you certainly get Danny Green as captain. But just make sure the rest of your lineup makes sense. Like if you have Fred and Lowry and Pascal as well, okay, now you're probably being too cute because you're somehow asking for those guys to produce and Danny Green to have his ceiling game. So, with restrictions, I think it's fine.
Next question is from DFS Slayer. Is Lowry viable at captain? Yes.
Absolutely. He'd be.
He's priced at
in my
8.
top 3. He's 8K. Like he's very viable as captain.
He just has to avoid foul trouble.
Captains I would look at and not have any trouble with would be Pascal in tournaments, but Klay, Kawhi, Steph, Iguodala, Danny, again, as discussed, is not untetherable for me. And I would have Lowry higher than Danny, higher than... Like, there's a... Dude, if he stays the hell out of foul trouble, could play 43 minutes again, which was his high in the series previously. He does not need to have a great game to put up 45 fantasy points in 43 minutes, which would be... Like, there's any more ways that work out. So Lowry is beyond captain, but I think he's a very good captain. It'll be a little bit cashy, but less than Klay, I think, and for that reason, I'd probably slightly prefer him at a bargain to run him out there before Klay. So he'd be like my number 3 captain, 4 maybe.
Projection for Ibaka on DK. I have him just a shade under 21, but price at 5.4. His price has obviously gone up each game, and we already went through the whole Ibaka spiel.
Yeah, if you're joining us late again, Ibaka has been great and deserves credit for playing well. But again, we're projecting forward, not looking back. I expect him to be really popular still at that price, and I think it's an overperformance. I don't know what to tell you. I have him for slightly better than you, actually. I have him for a little more than 21, but at a guy who's going to be 50 to 55% owned, I expect. Yeah, I would want very, very little. So I think I had him at 21.5 earlier today in 18 minutes. And again, loses a little bit with Looney starting as expected. Gains more in point per minute, but it's less likely he gets more than 21, 22 minutes, and that's what I'm really looking for if I'm playing him.
Do you like Ibaka, Iggy, or Gasol on FanDuel GPP? I think I would like Gasol for me.
I would like Gasol. He's going to be the highest owned of those 3 players pretty significantly. And it depends who else I have. If I had Ibaka, I would then, not play, Gasol alongside him. I think it's fine to run Iguodala, especially if he's only your second member of the Warriors relative to those other guys. So I don't have a strong preference between any of those guys because the degree to which they are going to be higher owned is roughly the degree to which I prefer them as sort of point per dollar plays. So just, who do I expect to score the most points? Marc Gasol out of those 3 guys. But I don't have a strong preference among which to play in that point.
Do you like Looney less if he starts versus Gasol? Huh? That's
No. If I want Looney, I want Looney to play 26, 28 minutes is what I'm hoping to get out of him, which is not weird. It's happened several times in the playoffs. And, Durant out means that you will get little or no Draymond at center. That's a little more and if he was coming off the bench, that's far less likely. So I would like him to see more of Ibaka and less of Marc Gasol as far as points he's going to score when he's on the court. But if I was playing Looney, I would be pleased with the news that he is starting.
hmm who do we like at captain? I like Iguodala, Cousins, Kawhi, Gasol, Lowry, and Thompson and Steph. There's a lot of captain options today on DK.
Yeah, on
Sorry to
DK
say.
with the addition of there's not a lot of in a one game slate. Honestly, it's really tough to there's 12 viable players, and I'm not going
Mhm.
to look at any of them and captain and be like, oh, that's absolutely crazy. I would try to avoid Ibaka. I think he's going to be 55% owned and like 17% at captain. I think those numbers are too high for what I expect out of him. I don't know if it's even a hot take. I think it's the ability to do basic mathematics, but other than that, there's really no one I'm like get on top of this guy or I'm specifically trying to avoid. We've had a couple games where there was a bit more of an edge, and I want to do more of a talk on edge. But someone asked me very simply, like, is there an edge today? And there is an edge every day, but sort of the key fulcrum point is the days when your collective edge is greater than the rake. And everyone's edge is different, but the largest piece of the edge is knowing shit better than the public in general. You'll also get edge from you have an exceptional procedure for entering contests or especially efficient at editing contests for late news. Your contest selection is particularly brilliant. Your You have all these things where you hope to be better than the field and you pick up a percentage edge here and 2% there and 4% there, and knowing better shit than the public is worth some variable amount a day. Sometimes it's worth nothing. There's no news and I can't give you anything. And then there's days where I'm like, okay, this is what happened. People are going to massively fuck that up. This guy's going to be 40% owned and should be 5%. This guy's going to be 5% owned and should be 40%. And that edge number is huge. And so the rake is, we'll call it 15%, assuming you're playing tournaments. It's 15, 16, but whatever. Does your edge come up to greater than whatever the hell the rake is? If it does, over the long term, you should be profitable. And that's why it's a reasonably rare case and why a minority of people are profitable playing DFS. But, today is not a day where I think for most people you would add up that edge and it would exceed the rake that people are going to pay. And you can see that in that I don't have a lot of, I think everyone's horribly wrong on this, and here's a guy who's super under-owned who should be more. So it's a rough go, but yeah, and I bring that back to the question of who are your favorite captains. I don't have I'm lower on Ibaka. Other than that, I'm like, yeah, all the numbers are gonna be roughly about where they should be, and you're throwing your shit out there and hoping it lands right. So that's today in a nutshell.
Yeah, we got a question saying Jerebko or Powell. I don't think Jerebko plays.
That's
Sorry.
Powell, not even a remote question. I would be shocked if Jonas
Yeah.
Jerebko. I'd give Jonas Jerebko a 10% chance of playing. And then you're dealing with the factors of him needing to do well, and so much so like Durant being out does absolutely nothing for him. And Sat game, I don't believe he has played since games. Maybe he got a blowout minute in that 15
Yeah, he
point.
hasn't played in a couple of games, I don't think.
Yeah, he's so yeah, Powell. That's not in any
I'm
way.
going to.
It's not in any way remotely close. He has played 3 games of the finals, 8, 6, and 10 minutes. Most recently on the 5th, which was game 3. So that was also the Clayless game. So the last 2 games he has not touched the court. So yeah, none for me.
I am now going to the YouTube chat. Premium Slack, feel free to tag me with some more questions. I think I covered them all. If I didn't, feel free to tag me again if I missed them. So, how much do you like Boogie tonight? Boogie comes with a risk for me as he has shown he's performed better coming off the bench in games 2 and 5. So I think Kerr saw that. They're going with that again and hoping it works. And he came out engaged, but he almost blew the game with the offensive foul, with the goaltending, and goaltending on both ends of the court. So,
And they're really targeting him on defense. The
oh
floor
yeah,
is
they put him in the pick and roll. Kyle Lowry abused him.
yeah. So his downside is significantly present. So his upside is also really significantly present. You have no Durant. Obviously, Draymond isn't doing a lot. Iguodala, let me rephrase that. Obviously, Draymond is not taking a million shots. Iguodala will frequently take 6 shots in a game. So you have the upside where Cousins gets cooking. And as you alluded to before, he came in that last game and in his first, don't have it in front of me, 5-minute shift had like 9 points and 5 rebounds and just really saved that game for the Warriors. Because Durant went out and he came in and beat people up in the second quarter and was just brilliant. And that's a real possibility. And he's cheap. So it ends up being an ownership question. Okay, he was down to 31% in the last game. His highest ownership in the series was certainly game 3 where you were without Klay, without Looney. We expected him to go off. He had been massive and been the best possible guy with 36 fantasy points in 28 minutes in game 2. And he was 75% owned. And on that day, I said I liked him a ton because I expected him to be less owned than he should be. I said, I think he's going to be like 55% owned. I think that number should be like 75. He was 75% owned. So your question is now, how much does he boost here? Looney is back and starting. He was down to 31% or whatever last time. How big does that number get? Because there is a really significant ceiling there. I'll guess that number it's going to be site dependent. But on FanDuel, where he's pretty cheap, there's value there. On DK, I expect him to be a little bit less with the improvements in the price of, say, Iguodala and Danny Green is still floating around. And people are going to run Lowry. But, there's a lot to math out there. But I'm going to guess his ownership comes in the mid-40s now. So I'm going to guess he gets...
DK?
Sorry?
I'm going to write this down.
Oh, you're writing it down? Yeah, I'll give him 45% on DK.
Okay.
I think that's about appropriate, so I don't have a strong take. If I like a guy, it's generally going to be because he's under-owned relative to where he should be. And if I dislike him, it's going to be Serge Ibaka, for example, is over-owned relative to where he should be. And again, one game sample, you'll never know if this is right or wrong per se, but that's how I would look at that. So I expect you'll get Boogie in the mid-40s. I think that's fine. So if you have Boogie and you build a lineup where that makes sense, where you don't also have Steph and Klay or also have Steph and Draymond or also have Kevon Looney, etc., I think it's just fine, but I end up being fairly ambivalent on that take.
Yeah, another question that we've covered in the past. Would you be inclined to play 4 Golden State or 2 Raptors or 4 Raptors and 2 Golden State?
Yeah, I mean, that take is sort of softened for me. I went pretty hard on that at the beginning of the series where I really felt like the pricing unreasonably favored him. I think that is much less important than selecting players who work in general and have a good projection, selecting players who are advantaged relative to what we expect their ownership to be, building a narrative of a lineup that makes sense. Somewhere down there I'm trying to team balance, but I don't care that much. The improved price on Iguodala and Curry being less owned than Kawhi makes them more appealing for me. I suspect I would end up on 3-3 most often.
Okay.
But I'm not forcing that. If I'm building a lineup, I'm not like, oh shit. I mean, until I hit a 5-1, if everything else makes sense, I don't think I really care.
Yeah. Now, would you play Danny Green or Looney straight up?
Very good question. I would play...
We're a minute from lock, so...
I would certainly play Danny Green in cash.
Okay.
Tournaments, that'd be very close for me.
Yeah, Green's we're a minute from lock, so...
Sorry?
We're a minute away from lock.
Yes, we are. We are 40 seconds out, so I'm fairly ambivalent on that as well. Sorry, I could invent a take, but I like Green more for raw points, but is going to be triple owned. So.
Yeah, we got a question. Would you rather play Iguodala or Klay at captain? I think I prefer Iguodala at captain. Gives me more flexibility, but Klay's completely fine. He can obviously blow up, hit 12 3-pointers.
Yeah, I think I would end up preferring to play Klay slightly just for ceiling considerations, but again, they're very close for me.
Yeah, so that's pretty much a lock.
Yeah, we're dancing, buddy.
Yeah, Game 6 upon us. Who do you like to win tonight?
I would bet on the Raptors. I have the game basically a toss-up, and they've got a couple points on the line, so were I to place a wager, I would probably wager on the Raptors.
I'm taking the Warriors.
I'm sure you're taking the Warriors. This whole series has been me saying the Raptors and you saying the Warriors.
So I think I've been 4-1. So I think I got game 4 wrong. But
I don't know where I would be. I'm not sure I even answered that question every day. But I imagine I'd be 3-2. I'm trying to think of a day where I said I think the Raptors get this game. Anyway,
Yeah, so
or
I
where I
think
said I think the Warriors get this game. Pardon me.
if the Raptors pull off 3 games at Oracle, credit to them, they deserve to win.
Yep.
But I think these guys really want to win it for them, and I'm going to ride that with them today. So we can go ahead and play ownership. Feel free to hit that like button. If today is our last show, it will be our last show till Summer League, which will be probably.
The Warriors could win, sir.
Oh, if it is our last show, we will be back on Sunday, on Father's Day.
Yeah,
But
I was about to say, you're like, this is our last show. I'm like, I thought you liked the Warriors tonight. This does not make sense.
no, I said if.
Oh, sorry,
But
I misunderstood. Continue. I apologize.
yeah, so hit that like button as we load this game of Daddy Like. So it'll be interesting to see how the studs are owned, especially Kawhi and Steph. So I really hope FanDuel maybe next year incorporates how much these guys are owned at their specific multiplier spots. But
yes, that would be nice to see them make that effort.
No,
all right, so let's start on DK. I went out and said Kawhi 75, Steph 61.
Kawhi 75, Steph 61. Okay, that is look this up. Kawhi is, and DK is taking a long time to load. Okay. All right, Kawhi is. You said what?
I said 75 for Kawhi and 61 for Steph on DK.
Kawhi is 75.2 and Steph is 63.1.
Right. I'm just going to take my victory lap now. I'll be back in a second.
So.
All right, we're back.
Is that victory lap done?
All right, no, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, so let us go back into Boogie Cousins.
I said 45. I got to stick with it. There or higher. He might have bounced more. I don't know.
He's 54.
Okay. That's what I said. I just have dyslexia. No, I said 45.
Klay Thompson.
55? Right in the same range.
He is 58. And how about Norman Powell?
You should really download these. Just make your life easier. 10.
He is 13.
Okay, I can dig that.
Iguodala.
That's a big ass number, kids. Oh, 61.
He is 63%.
Yep.
Danny Green.
I said mid-30s. We'll go 30s. Let's see. Iggy was that high, and that'll have a negative effect. I was like 36.
He is 38.
See, that's easy. That's easy.
Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, again, he was 25 last game. I said I thought he'd get into the 30s. I'll go 33.
He is 37.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I said Klay at whatever 53 and Lowry at 33. So I had them both a little bit low during the show, but
Andrew Bogut. Sorry.
Oh boy, with that much there and yeah, 6.
4%. Serge Ibaka.
Those other value guys are up a little bit. I said 50 to 55. I'll go with 51.
49.9.
So 50. Wow, this is good. I want to record this and
yeah. Siakam.
During the show, I said 18. I'll stick with it.
19. Quinn Cook.
I want this recorded. Someone who is a non-ironic fan of mine. Just cut and paste this shit and put it out on the internet. And there's no way, people are often like, you're cheating. A, I'm not. But B, if I was, I said all these numbers during the show. All of them almost. So that's pretty exceptional. I'm averaging a miss by like 1%.
Quinn Cook.
And there, Bogut was 5. And Siakam was there. 12.
He is 14.
Okay. So we that's the same as Powell, right?
He is 1%, 0.5% higher than Powell. Yeah.
Okay.
Fred VanVleet.
You're gonna be low. Hasn't really spiked the upside. A little less than that. Go 12.
He's 10.
10?
Kevon Looney.
We're gonna be low. Talked about it during the show. I think I said 8, 9. Trying to
He's
remember. I think
7.
I said 8. I'll say 8.
He's 7.
See, there you go. See, this is
All
easy.
right. There's a couple more that we haven't covered in Draymond and Marc Gasol.
Yeah, Draymond. I think still continues down in his descent from his highest number. I don't think he'd been under last time he got down to 37, 38. So I'll say 36.
He's 32 and a half.
That's a nice number on Draymond. I mean, now it's getting reasonable. Again, my dislike, quote unquote, for him at the beginning of the series wasn't that I thought he was bad. I thought he got, 41, 42, and about what he's gotten. I just thought he'd be 50 something percent owned, and he was around 50% owned. And, now at 32, I legit like it. I'd want a little more than that.
Funny question. Speaking of Draymond, someone asked us, do you think Draymond gets tossed tonight? If he gets another tech, he's suspended for Game 7. I think he behaves, especially what happened in 16.
You would hope.
Yeah.
Like, you would really hope. That is not a legacy you want. Cost your team multiple titles because you couldn't stop kicking people in the dick. You would hope.
Yeah. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, that's not the legacy you want. For a guy who's really a singular and amazing basketball player. He plays with a lot of heart. I love that. Don't like kicking people in the dingling and all that comes with that. And he sometimes screams at the refs. Yeah, I don't think that's fair.
He has one of the longer leashes. He probably has the longest leash in the league in terms of getting attacked.
Yeah. Credit to him for, working the referees is part of the game. I don't get people who are like, oh man, I hate that they fake fouls. They're trying to win games. They're the best players in the universe. You don't think James Harden's going to kick his head back and play the, I got fouled thing once in a while? It's points and winning games. You don't like it, change the system. It's like people used to get on baseball players for using steroids. Yeah, I know it's cheating. It's also millions of extra dollars in your pocket and helping your team win. You don't like it, make the system deal with steroids more stridently so it wasn't an obvious plus EV play to use them. You don't like people bitching about fouls and pretending to get hacked? Make the system not make those the correct things to do. So, credit to him for getting that leash.
Yep. Some of the players that I didn't mention: Livingston at 9.8, McKinney at 3.9, Jerebko at 3.5, Jordan Bell.
Jerebko at 3.5. What in the F are you watching? Like, I guess it's I don't know shit, and
no Kevin Durant, I guess.
Is out, so clearly Jerebko gets a roll, but maybe he's 1K flat, which makes it.
He's 1.4.
He's not even one flat. Yeah, that's. Maybe there is no one viable at 1K flat. Like maybe you're into the Jeremy Lin, Chris Bouchers of the world.
Yeah, Jordan Bell 2.4, Pat McCaw 0.5, who has played a couple minutes here and there. OG and Anunoby.
He got more minutes than Powell in game 1 or something, where it was like, I did not expect that.
Damian Jones 0.2, Damian Lee 0.16, who isn't even on the playoff roster.
That's true. He's not on the roster. He lost that last spot to Jacob Evans.
Yeah.
He gave that spot to him, which is interesting.
Let's go quickly to FanDuel.
Okay.
Let's start with Boogie Cousins.
FanDuel is 8K, right?
Yes.
It's going to be a number. He was more than I expected on DK also. I said 45 and he was 54. He's going to be higher than that on FanDuel. I'll go 63.
He is 61. You're on a roll.
Okay, let me tell you. That's. I'm never going to play the game again. I've beaten it. There's no better. I'm retiring on top.
Kawhi.
All right, so 61. It's raw points, but the value is shittier, so you're going to have less Steph plus Kawhi lineups. So I think he ends up net a little lower than DK, where he was right on at 75. 72.
71 and a half.
We're calling that a victory. We round up around here.
Serge Ibaka.
A number higher than it should be, probably. Came down a cookie on DK, was there 30 flat.
He's 26 and a half.
Okay.
Klay Thompson.
Bro is going to be owned. 57.
He's 70% owned.
70. There you go. Screwed one up horribly.
Steph
70.
Curry.
Sweet Jesus. Less than
Steph
that.
Curry, who is 16K on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think the ratio should be about the same. So we had 75 and 61, and then 72 and 57 for Steph.
He's 55.7. So
off by 1%. I'll take it.
Kevon Looney.
7,500. Oh, busted a little. 12.
He is 12.3. Marc Gasol.
Still 10K. It should be some number. And Klay was that high, so knocks it down a little. I'll say 40.
He is. Sorry, I wrote this down.
No problem.
Who did I mention? I completely am blanking.
Marc Gasol.
Marc Gasol is 36.2. Sorry. And then Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, again, I think similar ratio. So I'll go 33.
He's 30%.
Okay.
Let's see how much one of these 6K players might be owned. If I can find it.
And this is maybe my best game of this ever, and still wouldn't give myself the advantage to win today, being able to basically name everybody's ownership, and still still need to randomly get there. But
Norman Powell's 3.9%. So
that's I would have said 6 or 7, so I'd have missed that.
The game has started 2-0 Toronto. With that being said,
let's get out of here.
Thank you, and if there is a Game 7, we will see you then.
All right. Thanks, everybody. My pleasure as always.
Thank you.